You've mentioned democracy and the founding fathers a couple of times here. Is that, and it's an inefficient and sloppy way of living, isn't it? And it's often described that way. And also, you've said that what you represent in therapy and other circles is not so much a technique as a way of being. How do you get up in the morning and be in a healthy, developmental way?
Let me modify what you said a little bit. A democratic way of functioning, especially in an organization or in an institution, appears inefficient and appears sloppy. And it's only when you measure the results down the line that you find it is more efficient than the neat towing the mark kind of outfit. Go ahead. I had something else I was going to say, but I can't think of it.
You mean because although it seems indefined, there's actually a lot more going on, and so measured over a longer period of time, more gets accomplished than in step A leads to step B leads to step C.
And furthermore, you've got people committed to something, where instead of just obeying an order.
Right, working on their own things that they're committed to.
There's a very, very clear example of that in Procter & Gamble. A good friend of mine has been a consultant there for many years, so effectively working with middle management that they gave him 3 plants where he would be responsible for training all of the personnel. And he was a very person-centered sort of guy. And 3 other plants were control plants, carried on in good business-like fashion because Procter & Gamble was an effective organization. Over the years, his 3 plants have consistently been more efficient. They produce units at much less cost. It's a model, and people come in there when they don't punch a time clock. They come in as they wish. They talk with each other. They shift jobs. They do things that make life more interesting in the plant. They need fewer inspectors because they inspect their own work. They're not doing a sloppy job. So in the 3 plants, they're just making more money for Procter & Gamble than the 3 control plants. But when I talked to him recently, he said he thought he was a failure as a consultant because the other managers come in there and look at the place and admire what the balance sheet and all that, admire the product, admire the morale, but when they learn that that was achieved by having managers share the power, they shy away. They're afraid of that. In other words, they really are afraid of a democratic way of functioning in industry, just as I feel we're afraid of it in education, we're afraid of it in our society.
What is it that you call democratic? I wonder what it is.
Well, let me see. I think a real democracy would be a place where a person had some say in any decision that affected his welfare or behavior or what. And where the essential power would lie in the whole group, which then might delegate power to someone, but the essential power still rests with the whole group. And where there would be, one other thing, where there would be good communication so that I know what effect my behavior had. In other words, if some of the group do this, they ought to be informed as to what happened as a result of that behavior so that they can then correct their mistakes or change their direction in more positive ways. As it is in schools, other places, we don't have much of that fundamental choice, and the information about consequences is held by the people in power.
So then freedom becomes anarchy, not a mutual democratic cooperation. If everyone's free to do their own thing without being in tune with the consequences in their own environment, then you've got an anarchy situation, not a democratic one.
Yeah, and you're not saying at all that works, but I think some people liken what you're saying about democracy. They're liking it to anarchy, and it's like, no, I'm not saying anarchy works at all. Not at all. There are checks and balances within the where we know that what we say to each other is influencing and affecting one another. When you close
you
that
need the
down,
feedback, that's right.
you don't have a democracy. And if you're saying, well, look, it's failing, you're not looking at a democracy. Something may be failing, but with that.
Can parents develop this kind of democratic and self-confident individual? I'm thinking particularly in terms of dealing with the school system, for example, and the child's overall development. What are some of the things that a parent might attempt, aim for?
Well, one of the challenging aspects of a revolutionary point of view is that you begin to think, why couldn't it be applied over here as well as there? So if you started learning it in therapy, you wonder, why couldn't I do this in the classroom? If you're doing it in the classroom, you wonder, why couldn't I treat my son and daughter that way? It's insidious. It really starts you thinking about all kinds of things. And yes, I think that we're moving toward a more democratic family. It's much less authoritarian than it used to be, and could be more so, I believe. And it means being willing to share power with other members of the family.